Hey, my friends, welcome to the Personal Development Unplugged podcast. And this is your heads up to what's to come. If you don't want to know what's to come, you can switch it off, but that would be silly. Maybe just too unconfident to listen. And if you are, and if you have any unconfidence or lack of confidence or low self-esteem, this is the episode to listen to, because we're going to go through how do you measure your unconfidence and how do you change it right now? Because if you change it really quickly, wouldn't that be awesome? So if you want to know how that is done, listen after this. It'll be great. Well, it'll be good. It'll be good. It will be good. Hey, welcome to the Personal Development Unplugged podcast. So pleased you're here. Your time is valuable and precious. So what I would like to do is fill that time that you share with me with the most shiny golden nuggets to help improve your life, to get your goals, your wishes, your dreams to come to fruition quicker, bigger, better than you could ever imagine, using your imagination, using hypnosis, using NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, all of that, using all things of the mind. No brain hacks, but real solid processes to deconstruct what people do to become great. And then find the processes that we can install that in ourselves to support you in your dreams and get what you really want in life. Anyway, who am I? I'm Paul Clough, and just going to have conversations with you in this podcast and get you thinking, but also share those processes because we're going to have so much fun. That's it. We're going to have fun for a change because we can sit down for a spell and have more fun than we can stand, creating the world we want to live in and be the person we want to be in that world. The only limitation is your imagination. And you got bucket loads, by the way, bucket loads. Have a listen. You really must.
Warning. You are entering into the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. Too late. Personal Development Unplugged.
Hey, my friends, we're back with another longer podcast with me, Paul Clough. There's only me here, so it's got to be me. And I wanted to talk a little bit about confidence and how the hell do you measure? How do you gauge your confidence or lack of it? There's that thing that people, I see so many clients and they go, I'm so unconfident, which I normally answer, well, you seem pretty confident about being unconfident, which is sort of funny for me a little bit. But it gets them to think a little bit, because when we say we're unconfident, we're not unconfident everywhere, but we have it, well, we've generalized a small bit of unconfidence in one particular context of our life, one area of our life, and we've let it just generalize into every other area, because that's what happens, isn't it? But the thing is, how do you measure? How do you measure confidence, your confidence? That's the question. How do you measure your confidence? Or how do you measure your unconfidence? Something that you're thinking about doing and, well, how do you know what unconfidence is, I guess, as well? Thinking about it. I mean, my unconfidence. How do I know if I'm unconfident? Let me share a bit with you. Well, I tend to get a weird feeling in my tummy. It's a little bit, there's a little hollow type, a little bit tight, and it seems to sometimes go to my neck, to my throat, because I can't speak very well. And again, what the other thing I guess I do is I start to think about things, think about what I'm going to say, and I'm not listening and not thinking about anything else. And I think that's when I know that I'm not being the confident little Paul that you can be. I can even remember a story, not a story, it's a true story. It's a true story of my very, 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 very first training really, hypnosis training. And for some of you, you might have heard this before, but I doubt it. You see, we all got there. And I'm not going to go through the whole story of getting there because that's a weird story in itself. But in the morning, the very first morning, we all got there. I suppose there's about 16, 20 people. And the trainer is on a little stage and he introduces himself and has a little chat and then goes, well, we've got a microphone. Why don't we go around the whole room and introduce ourselves? And that was my worst nightmare because I'm pretty introverted anyway until it comes to not performing, but actually doing something as well if I know it well. But the thing is, speaking in front of 3 people was bad. I know I've now done it in front of hundreds of people, but that's not the same. Right back then, it was really bad. And the thing is, I did the one thing that hypnotists like to do, and it's called an embedded command. So within your conversation, you can embed a command. And I did it to myself because I was so frightened, so unconfident that I could even remember my name. All I kept saying to myself was, don't forget your name. Don't forget your name. Don't forget your name. And that's all I had. And I had that weird feeling in my tummy. My throat was getting tighter and tighter. And that little voice inside my head was going, don't forget your name. And guess what happened? You see, I wasn't first and I wasn't last. I was in the middle. And I was literally counting the people off, listening to their... But I wasn't really listening to them because all I kept saying to myself was, don't forget your name. And guess what happened? I stood up, took the microphone. I couldn't remember my bloody name. And I literally just stood there and said, I can't remember who I am, but I'm sure I will later. Thank you. And passed the microphone on. Which, looking back, is quite funny. But it wasn't at the time. And that's one thing you could call as being unconfident and how you measure it. You see, most would look at their unconfidence and say, well, how scared they are, maybe, how worried they are, how anxious they are. And that's their level of unconfidence. What's yours? Have a think now. Muse with me. Think back to a time, not a big one, but just think back to a few times, separate contexts when you knew you were unconfident. Or even maybe you're thinking thinking of the future, something you're unconfident about. And notice where you feel the feeling and how would you describe it? Not the whole feelings, that stuff we've done before, but just, is it scared? Is it worried? Is it anxious? Is it fearful? And just notice what it is. You see, a lot of people, me included, until I realized, and this is the thing I'm going to share with you, is that most of us measure our unconfidence by the results we got. Like, well, the last time I did it, it was a failure. I bombed. It was horrible. And therefore, I start to think about what can go wrong in the future, and I get even more scared, more fearful, more worried, more anxious, and get more and more unconfident. So that's one way to do it. Because if it didn't work before, which equals failure, why would it work again? In fact, it'd probably be worse, because now I'm even worried about being worried. But then I thought to myself, I do a lot of thinking about this, as you know, but have you ever done something that you've done before, that you were confident in doing, and it didn't work out? We all have, haven't we? There's stuff I just knew I could do it, and the bloody thing didn't work, or it didn't work as well as I wanted. Now, why was that then? Because I was confident, but the result I got wasn't what I wanted. Was it because I was overconfident? Because that can be that. Maybe didn't quite, because of that overconfidence, prepare well enough. Because that's what anxiety and fear is trying to do for you, I guess, is to make you prepare. That's a positive intention. So you don't fail. Trouble is, you get overwhelmed, you worry so much, you bloody fail. So there's a conflict. So there's a better way of doing it. But then on the other hand, have you ever done something that you've never done before, you weren't that confident of, and guess what? You bloody achieved it. You did actually way better than you thought. So that doesn't make sense, does it? Because you can be unconfident in doing something and get a good result. Now again, that may be because you're stretching yourself, which is a great thing to do because it means you're focusing on what you want to do. Maybe because you're stretching, you haven't got time to get worried, scared, anxious, because you're really concentrating and preparing. Oh, there's that preparation word again. But either way, you can fail at something you've done before if you can if you take the word failure, the thing the result, if you take that as failure, or something that you've never done before and didn't fail, if you take failure, you were a success. You see, I don't think it's a failure. In NLP, there is no such thing as a failure. It's just the results you get. Might not have been the result that you wanted to get. Now, there's a couple of things that came to mind. This is why I started to muse about this. Because I was listening to a guy on a podcast talking to somebody else, and his name was Ed Meyer. I think it's Meyer or Myler. M-Y-L-E-R or M-Y-E-R. I'm not quite sure because I can't read my writing. But he was just relaying a story that he was in Maui, Hawaii. What lovely sounding words, aren't they? And he'd just finished his run on the beach, and who should come jogging past him was Wayne Dyer. And he said he couldn't help himself, but he just shouted out, "Hello, Mr. Dyer, Dr. Dyer. You've done so much for me." And Wayne Dyer, bless him, he's not here anymore, but bless him, he's a wonderful man, stopped, turned around, went back, and sat down for half an hour, 40 minutes or so, and just talked to this guy, this Ed. And he was saying some wonderful things to him. But he said, your confidence doesn't come from the results you get, but it's attached to your intention. I think about that again. Confidence does not come from the results you get, but is attached to your intention. So the intention that you had about doing something. Now that makes sense to me. I would like to add, for my own little Cluffy ad, when we have that self-belief in our intention. I think that maybe goes hand in hand, but I just wanted to, we can have an intention, but we don't really believe it. Then I don't think that confidence would be there. But if you have a real positive self-belief about your own personal intention for doing something, that's where the confidence comes from. And how could you be unconfident if you have a self-belief about your intention? And to give you a good example of that, only yesterday was I listening to, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was an old podcast episode of Tim Ferriss with the comedian Bill Burr. I love Bill Burr. I actually love Tim Ferriss. And I love Bill Burr. And Bill Burr was talking about, or had been asked a question, what was it like? How did you get into this comedy thing? And he said he was a really not bad introvert. He's a very good introvert because he didn't like talking to people. And he said, but he decided he wanted to try to be a comedian. And he'd done bits and pieces, made people laugh. But then to be a comedian, you have to get up on stage and talk to people, get a microphone in your hand. And he said the first time he went on stage was an open mic night. I say that again, open mic night. And it was a competition for, I think, student comedians. So during that night, he got up and he said, I'd got everything prepared. But as soon as I held that mic in my hand, my mind went. It was as if I went and stood beside myself, disassociated, which is what happens anyway when we're having a little bit of a little traumatic moment. And he said, it was as if I was just watching myself go through the motions. And he said, the thing was, instead of doing the first bit first, the middle bit in the middle, and the last bit last, he said, I did the last bit, then I did the first bit, and then I did the middle. And it just was, he said it was terrible. Absolutely terrible. And he said, you're all thinking that I won, don't you? And he said, I didn't come last, but I didn't come anywhere near the top. Now, a lot of people would say, well, you failed. You didn't win. And you're Bill Burr. You didn't win. So it must have been a disaster for you. He said, no. He said, when I drove home, he said, I was singing at the top of my voice. I was woo-woo-wooing and I was so pleased with myself. He said, well, how could you be so pleased if you bombed on your very first time? He said, because that wasn't the thing I wanted to do. I had to do it just to get up onto that stage, pick up a mic and just talk, even if it was a load of old bollocks. I just wanted to talk. And he said, I did that. And that was my first step. And I was so pleased. And can you see that he had self-belief that he could go up on that stage and just pick up the microphone and talk, not win the competition, not win everybody over, just that. And that was his intention. So it's self-belief in himself, or self-belief in the intention. I'm going to stand up on that stage and talk. That's all. Anything better than that, icing on the cake. So he could have been nervous, scared, worried, anxious, but he had that self-belief in his intention. And those two came together basically within a few days from me listening to different podcasts. And I thought, this is all making so much sense now. And the thing is, this thing about, having self-belief in your intention, isn't it just a matter of now, when you think of what you want to do, that I might even say that you were scared of, were worried about, were anxious of, were, call it in air quotes, I'm doing air quotes, you can't see, but air quotes, unconfident. All you have to know is, what is your intention? What do I want to have happen? So it could be, I just want to perform my best. If I go for an interview and I can just perform my best, give all the answers that I know to my best ability and be myself. So if I don't get the job, I don't get it, but at least I performed at my best. So that's your intention. But then, add to that intention your why, the reason you want. Why is it important to you? And it could be then the reason for, say, that interview. I want to perform my best because even if I don't get it, I'm going to learn from this experience. That's important, to have experience and be able to give my own personal message about me. So that's it. That's my belief in my intention, and I know my why now. Why is it important to me? And once you got that, things just tend to happen because then you can add to that, you see. And this is a little bit more of the how. So first of all, obviously, know your intention. What do you want to have happen? Know the why. Why is it important to you? And then when you know those two, you can actually start saying, well, let me think about this. What would it be like to? And take the example of going to that interview. Being able to go to that interview, to be cool, confident, comfortable, and to express myself truly, to be my best. And that's all you have to do. The question is, what would it be like to ... And that's it. Now, you could leave it like that because I know your unconscious mind is then going to take that as a wonderful question. And when you get to that interview, if we're keeping the interview example going, your unconscious mind is going to go, here we go. You asked what it would be like to be comfortable, calm, and be your real self. That's what you got. But then you can do a little bit more. Because when you've made that question up and write it out, don't be a little numpty. Numpty. Don't be a spannerhead. That's another word from a long. You're a spannerhead. Write it out in your puzzle book. Keep it under one page because under that you're going to write your intention. You're going to get your purpose or your why. Why is it important to you? You're going to write those down because then you can formulate that question to be as best as you can. How you want it to be. That's going to match that intention and match that why. And then close your eyes and visualize it happening as well. And first of all, well, the way I like to do it is, or I like to get my clients to do it, is visualize seeing a you over there actually just going through it. That's all. Because when you do it like this way, you're like the director. You're dissociated. You're directing that star of the movie. That's you down there. And you make sure you're happy with what you see from up here, down there. And when you're happy with what you see and the outcome, then you can imagine, visualize yourself floating into that you down there and going through that event and feel the feelings, see what you'll see, hear what you'll hear, and feel those feelings. Because what are you doing? You're feeling the wish fulfilled. You're showing your unconscious mind, this is my sort of answer, what it would be like. And in fact, as I feel this, I wonder what positive belief I've got about myself. You could ask yourself that. And it's going to be probably something as subtle as I've got this. I can do this. I'm okay. It's going to be something like that. And you can hook into that as well. Because you can remember that and actually just say that to yourself just before you go to the example of the interview. I've got this. Because that would then fire off those feelings. But at least then you get so grateful. Because when you're in that movie for a little while, you realize this is exactly how you want it. You can feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You've got that belief. So as you come back into your own body, because we've always got to come back to ourselves, you can say that belief again. And it's going to be like a verbal audio anchor, isn't it? So that's what you could do. But then you see, you could start to think a bit more. Because it could be something that you need. Well, we all have to prepare for these things that we were in the past anxious about, scared about, worried about, maybe in our own mind failed about because we were gauging our confidence on the results and not our intention. But now, knowing your intention and knowing what it felt like, that feeling of the wish fulfilled, you could actually start asking yourself a few questions. Is there anything I need to know? Is there something important I want to share? So I just want to make sure I've got the bullet points for that. Maybe a little mind map. Because when you've got a mind map and you put that down, it's in your head. And you can read it in your mind. Or maybe, is there someone I know who's done this before? Maybe I could just have a quick chat with them. Is there any information on YouTube? Is there any book or someone that I want to have a chat with? Things like that. What type of information do I have right now? So maybe you've got some skills you want to just brush up on. Maybe that visualization. Maybe you've got some notes that you want to quickly read to put into a particular place. So I'm just going to go through that information again. Make sure it's just nice and tidy. You don't have to keep going over again, because that's that old overwhelming way that didn't really work, did it? And then when you've got all that together, you can just let it go, because you've done the work. I've just suddenly thought of a little story that I have. And again, this is a true story. This was at the end of my practitioner training. So I'd done my hypnosis trainings. I'd gone to NLP practitioner training, and we had to do a little, I think it was either my prac or my master prac. I think it was my master prac, thinking about it again. We had to master and actually model a particular skill from somebody else that we didn't have. And I had all these notes. I had bundles and oodles of them. And the thing about having oodles of notes on little cards, if you drop the buggers, they're all out of order. So that's why I love a mind map. But I put them in my head in the form of a mind map. And because I knew how important it was to me, because I knew my intention, and I didn't realize it until just now, and because I had gone through that process of asking myself what it would be like, and knowing that I could feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled, I got up on that stage to deliver my little resume of what I'd done, how I mastered this particular thing, how I modeled it. And I forgot. I put the cards down to one side and I just did it. And I did it better than I imagined. And to some extent, I knew it was going to be a stretch. But that stretch wasn't quite as far as I thought it would be. Or I just nailed it. And that's why I think it's great to stretch as well, because if you just do the things you've done before, well, you're going to get the same type of results, but we build upon them. So with every success where you get your intention, you fulfill your intention, and therefore your confidence grows, you can stretch yourself a little bit more, which just like opens up all those boundaries. You know, that I'm in place of comfort, that familiar place. You know, that, oh, I'm comfortable here. But no, you can make it stretch even further. And the more you stretch it with that intention, that belief, you can just enjoy it. I don't know if you can hear those sirens in the background. They're not for me. This is just where I am, and that's going on longer than I thought it might do. But we're going to carry on. But this whole thing, just like Nike, whatever you say it, once you get there, you just do it. And when you do it, all you have to measure yourself by is, did I live up to my intention? Did I get my why? Did I anchor? Or did I really fulfill that feeling of the wish fulfilled? Because that's all it is. And if you didn't, by the way, that's not an issue, because we just got a result. It wasn't a failure. We just got a result. And so we can review what we did. And maybe, it was going so well until this happened. So I can do better next time. Because that was why I stretched myself to do better. Because you'll never know how much you are, as it were. Because you're always more than that. Whatever you think you are, you're always more. You just don't know it. That's the thing. You just don't know it. You don't know that you know it. But when you get to do it, then you get to know it. And then there's even more, if that makes any sense at all. So that's all about building confidence. So you don't build it on which is a little recap, I guess. We're not building confidence by measuring it against the results we get. Because they can be good, bad, or indifferent. Because those results are not failures. They are they're the results. That's what we got. But if we start to look at our intention, what we're trying to do, or not trying, what we're going to do, and why we want to do it. Now, this is my intention. This is my why it's important to me. And this is a belief that I have in that intention. Then you can ask that question, what would it be like to? And then visualize it. Really understand that positive belief behind all of that, and then feel the feeling of the wish fulfilled. And then plan it. Plan it, get your resources together, and then go bloody do it. And you will smash it. You'll knock it out of the park. And then you'll grow. And that's what we're here to do. Grow. Because in some ways, we're growing into the person we are. Which is a weird way, isn't it? That's weird. I just suddenly thought about that. Growing into the person we are. Because we're always more than we think we are. Therefore, we've got to grow into that person who's even more than we think we are, to find out that actually we can grow even more because we're more than that. Because whatever you think you are, you're more than that. That's a lovely thought, I think. It's a lovely thought to maybe just muse upon for a little while, and I'm going to let you do that. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it made a little bit of sense. I mean, if you want to look for that Wayne Dyer, I can't remember which podcast it was on, but look up Ed Meyer with Wayne Dyer, and also the Tim Ferriss podcast interviewing Bill Burr, and it was on his Fearless, not Fearless, but Fearless set of I think just some TV programs. I'm not sure, but you can find those quite easily. I'm sure if you Google away, you'll be there. And while you're Googling away and you're online, why not share this podcast? Oh, I haven't told you that, or I haven't reminded you about that for a long, long time, since the last time, I guess. It's always since the last time. If you would, again, you don't have to share it with everyone. You don't have to. You could just do it with one or two people. Or you could sit and look at that and say, well, I've done a couple, I might do another couple. But if you could just share it with one person, that would be awesome. And share what you've learned from this. Talk about it with other people. Because as you talk about it, you're in some ways living what you learn, which is the phrase I've been copying or pulling from somewhere else. But when you're living what you learn by explaining it, you get better at it. And then you'll do more and you'll stretch more. So if you would just share it, if you want to give me a little email, feedback at personaldevelopmentunplugged.com, you could do that. There you go. I'm not going to do any more things to do because I don't want to overload you. So I'm not going to tell you about the free hypnosis tracks because you have to find out where they are. And I'm not going to tell you about Paul Clough Online, where my premium tracks are, because you have to find out that by yourself. So I'm not going to talk about that. Just the sharing. Because sharing is caring, and sharing is a selfless service. And the thing about selfless service is when you give to others without any expectation of a return, the multiverse, the universe, suddenly dollops a great big chunk of goodness on you that you didn't expect and you didn't. Well, you can't say you didn't want because it's lovely, but you didn't expect. So that's another good reason to share this podcast, I guess, to get the big dollop of goodness. So I'll let you think about that now. I wonder how confident you are of sharing. I think I've flogged that one to death now. Okay, so it's time to fly, my friends. But very much lastly, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate your time. I know so many people say that, but I really do. I know they do too. But I appreciate there's so many other things you can listen to, and you're listening to me prattle away. Well, thank you so much. And I hope I am giving you a few golden nuggets which will change your life right now. Okay, so let's fly. Stretch and fly, my friends. Bye-bye.
Warning, you are now leaving the unplugged mind of Paul Clough. It's time to fly on your own. Be brave, my friend.
Personal Development Unplugged.